once again for the renegade master. Back 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 once again for the renegade master.
Hello my renegades and welcome back, and we are back into Married at First Sight UK and we are on series 8 and now episode 6. And just before we get into that episode, as I always ask, please hit that subscribe button, please hit that notification button so when you know I am on and doing videos. Whew. And then we'll get into this episode. Well, now we have some more set couples. So we have Peggy and George, we have Terence and Portia, Paul and Tasha, and Shona and Brad, and they're all now getting on and going on to their honeymoon. So let's see what's going on in this episode. So with Portia and Terence, it starts off okay. Terence is quite in awe of where they're staying, but straight off the bat, it don't faze Portia in the slightest, because she's already let it out that, you know what, this is the type of luxury that she is used to, and her saying that would tell Terence that this is the type of luxury that you need to keep her accustomed to as well, because this is what she's looking at in terms of her life with her husband. I don't know how far she's going to get that with Terence, because as we wouldn't know about their finances and stuff like that and seeing if they can do those kinds of things. But at the end of the day, Terence is a hard-working man in that regard. So it just remains to be seen how these two are literally going to gel with each other. Right now, they're doing okay, but there's going to be little hiccups along the way. I see it with these ones. Then we go to Peggy and George, and already George is making a freaking name for himself. He's being Lurch McGurch when he fucking starts looking at Peggy in her bikini and liking the way she looks and the fit and everything. And basically she's saying that she's sexually attracted to him, but she wants to know him without the facade that he puts on. And I'm thinking to myself, is it really bravado? Is it really a facade? Is it really a facade, I should say, that he's putting on? Or is this George? Or is this one part of George that he's just going to keep showing, and the other part you ain't just got to know yet? So basically, she was talking about what she's into and stuff, because she's into very much to tech, and the fact that you wouldn't look at her and think absolute brainiac and nerd, but that's what Peggy is at the end of the day. So basically they get into this conversation of Peggy asks him what his thoughts would be around how she decided that she wanted to make money by doing adult entertainment, adult movies and things like that. George gave the wrong answer, because George says as long as she came to him and they spoke about it and it was doing this and he wouldn't necessarily have an issue with it. So basically Peggy got that to mean, as she asked him, so that would you do anything for money in that respect? And George says maybe. Now this kicked off big style with Peggy, because she couldn't understand how if he was like, as he's married to her, as a married man, would be happy seeing his wife's body splayed out for other people to see. She did not get that concept in that regard. Now I understood where Peggy was coming from, but I kind of understood where George was coming from, because at the end of the day, there's some married couples, or there's some couples out there that don't mind that absolutely don't mind that, as long as they're aware of what's going on and you speak to them about the concept of whatever it is that you're doing, they're quite fine with you doing that. They do not mind, because Peggy said it was degrading to women in George thinking the way that he thought. But for some women they feel that way, but for others, like some in the industry, don't feel that way at all. They feel like a sense of empowerment when they're doing what they're doing, because at the end of the day, it's a job to them. They don't see it as any other way, but it's a job to entertain the masses in that sense. And yeah, she just bit off and went off, and then basically tried to have that conversation with him again. He still didn't see where she was coming from, and she literally threw her dummy, because that's how I'm going to put it, she threw her dummy out of the pram and freaking walked off and slammed the door. It quickly then skips to Shona and Brad, and they're talking about how they got into their journeys in spirituality And he basically says he believes he can only fall in love 3 times and he's fell in love twice already. So basically Shona says, oh, will I be the next one? And I'm like, Shona, you jumping ahead of yourself again, my girl. Take it slow, rein it back. Get to know this person. Get to know this person before you give them your all. Make sure he's the one that you want. Yes, you are both aligning. I ain't gonna lie. Yes, they are both aligning in terms of their interests and what they're talking about and their spirituality and how they live their life. And yes, they are aligning. I can see that. But could it be one of these relationships where it sparks pretty quickly and then fizzles out quite quickly too? So we'll have to see how they then are able to manage any type of conflict that comes their way in their relationship, and how they're then able to speak to each other as part of that conflict, because that remains to be seen. Because yes, as again, the spark is burning bright with these two. They're aligning very nicely, but some things are gonna come to test them. And then you see Tasha and Paul, and like there's nothing really that I can really say about that. Means they're really getting along with each other. They're taking that time to get to know each other. And as Tasha says, she doesn't want to jump into the physicality of their relationship quite quickly. Yes, the sexual chemistry is there, but she doesn't want to jump into that because she wants to make sure that she's ready for that next step with Paul. And once she's ready with that next step with Paul, then Paul will find out. Paul will find out. He will never rest again. I don't think once Tasha's ready to jump into physicality with him at the end of the day. But yeah, I think she's right not to rush, and because what you need to realize is that these people are essentially strangers to each other, because this is in essence, as I keep saying, an arranged marriage. So they're having to get to know everything about them in a short condensed space of time, to be able then at the end to decide whether they're going to stay married to this person or not. But we shall see how their journey takes them. I, for one, am excited to see how Tasha and Paul's journey takes them, to be fair. And then we move back to Portia and Terence, and they're having their conversations, and they then moves to the financials aspect of the relationship and any type of marriage. Because basically he knows that Portia is just wanting to be kept. She's wanting to be a kept wife at the end of the day. She don't want to work. She doesn't want to contribute financially to the household. She wants what her mum and dad has at the end of the day. Her dad is the breadwinner of the household, and her mum just does the stuff that she needs to do around the home and things like that in regards to upkeeping the family, and that's the type of lifestyle that she wants. So basically she asked him if he would expect her to contribute 50-50, and he said yes. She didn't like that answer at all. She said because she's saying at the end of the day there's nothing stopping her from going out to work and contributing if she wanted to contribute, but she actually doesn't want to do that. So basically all I'm thinking that there's gonna have to be some type of compromise between these two, and I don't see it coming in that sense, because I don't think even though Terence says he wants a traditional marriage in that sense, I don't think he wants an all the way traditional marriage, because he wants his wife to bring something to the marriage too. Like, when I say that 50 people shouldn't be aiming for 50-50, they should be aiming for 100-100. You put 100% of yourself into everything that you do at that time, especially when you get married in that sense. But I think with Terence, I think Portia's expectations are going to be a little too high, especially with the example that her parents set, because she needs to understand that everybody is individual and they work differently when it comes to marriages and when it comes to relationships. She's not necessarily going to always get what her parents have in that sense, because that's her parents' life, that's her parents' marriage. Yes, she wants something akin to that, but you've got to pick that type of man who's going to give you that. And this is why some people say, oh, I need to find me a church man, or I need to find me a church woman, because basically their thoughts and I suppose their morals and I suppose the way that they think about family in that patriarchal linear way is going to mesh a lot better than someone on the outside of the church in that sense. So then we come back to Peggy and George, and they're still going at it in regards to the situation that occurred and the discussion that they had. Now, my thing is the discussion Peggy had with George was hypothetical. Yes, George didn't answer it the way that she wanted to, but she has to look at who George is at the end of the day and how he behaves in certain circumstances. He is still a man-child. He's still a man-child. He hasn't grown up in that respect. He hasn't matured to the stage that Peggy's at the end of the day. And I'm just thinking basically that she overreacted. It was a hypothetical situation, and I think she completely overreacted. You can at me all you want, but that's my opinion. I really think that she overreacted in the way that she's now carrying on with George, and how she feels about how he would be accepting if she wanted to do X, Y, and Z. I'm like, but you're not going to ask him if you can do that though. You're not going to ask him if you can go into page 3 modelling or bloody pornos and this, that and the other though, are you? You're not going to do that. Realistically, real life, from your point of view, you are not going to do that. I think she was just probably testing the level of morals that George may have. I think that's what she was doing in regards to asking him that question, to be honest with you. And she got slapped upside the head when he gave her the wrong type of answer. And I was just like, well, have you met George? Like, really? Given his best man speech and the Speedo situation, have you met George? Come on now. And then it flips back to Shona and Brad, and we see that things have got a little bit more juicy for them, because I think they had a couples massage and then they had a couples massage afterwards. So they did the fandango in any which way form they wanted to. And basically they said they were talking about how their souls connected through that act. And I'm just like, I think these two are going to get on my nerves at some point. Like, seriously, they're great together and all that, but these two are going to get on my nerves at some point. Like, really going to get on my nerves at some point. Because I understand your soul's connected and you carried on and felt what you felt, and you know everything aligned and the angels sang. But at the end of the day, sometimes when you start with the physicality too quick, everything else can be overshadowed, because your concentration is more on the physicality rather than the emotional connection within that. So even though they said that they're aligned in terms of spirituality and things like that, as soon as you throw in the old adage of the sex, that tends to muddy the waters. So again, I will reserve judgment on these two as well and see how things play out for them, especially when they hit a conflict in their relationship and how they then will deal with that. So then I'm going to gloss over to George and Peggy. And George then apologises to Peggy, basically says that she's right, and realised that he put his foot in it with her and wanted to work it out, basically. I mean, I understand you want to work it out with someone, but when you set the precedent of telling the person that they are right and they have more experience in the love and relationship department than they do, are you going to say that all the time? Because that's going to be the expectation at that point. That is going to, you set a precedent there, because that's going to be the expectation that every time Peggy asks you a question and you give her the wrong answers and she flounces off in the way that she does and she gets pissed and irritated, the expectation then is when she don't come and talk to you, the expectation is you then go and speak, you then run behind her to apologise and say that she's right. How is that going to work in the long run? That's all I'm going to say. How is that really going to work in the long run for them two? Because it isn't. Because at the end of the day, Peggy can't always be right. Peggy cannot always be right in every situation, every scenario at the end of the day. Because they're going to come a point where George is going to be, do you know what, fuck this. I can't be asked. You have your tantrum and then come and find me and talk to me afterwards. Because that's what she's doing. She's having a tantrum over a hypothetical motherfucking question. Now, I could see both parts of the argument, to be fair. I could really see both parts of the argument, to be fair. But I think Peggy really took it to the nth degree at the end of the day, where she didn't really need to take it there. She didn't really need to take it there. And he didn't have to turn around and say, well, you know, it's because you're right. And I've not been in a relationship in the way that you've been in a relationship, so I wouldn't necessarily know how a relationship works. But that's how you learn and you bounce off each other at the end of the day. So yeah, no, yeah, he apologized, but I think he set a precedent by actually saying to her, yeah, you're right and I'm wrong, sort of thing, to try and appease her and make her feel better. So then it comes to Portia and Terence again, and they're out having a meal. So basically, Portia is saying that she wants to be number one in her man's life. And I'm thinking, well, that's going to be impossible, especially with the children, because your children are going to be number one and you're going to be secondary. It's how it always works at the end of the day. You can't expect to be number one in Terence's life when he's got 3 children to contend with. So that's Ixnay at the first stage, to be fair. So basically, he was talking about his career and saying that it has caused a lot of problems within his relationships, and then that's when they were talking about how his relationships have been broken down. And basically he said he was naughty, and I knew as soon as he said he was naughty, he's going to say that he cheated. And he did, not once, not twice, but 3 times, more than 3 times. I would not know, but yeah. So I'm kind of like, so after you've told her that, how are you expecting your wife to be secure in the fact that you DJ and you're out for quite all hours of the night? And we all know what happens with some thirsty girls and the DJs and this, that, and all that. So is it going to be different now that you are married? The commitment to this person now that you're married, is your DJ life going to be different? Because you didn't show that commitment when you were with the women that you thought you'd be with for a longevity of time and probably work towards being engaged and being married. So how does it work when you're actually married to this person and you're going out and doing DJing? Where does his morals and his factors start to push in order to make for him to make better decisions when it comes to certain type of women, like throwing themselves at him or asking for certain type of music, or you know, they're feeling the music and they're saying, oh, DJ, and they're flirty. How is he then going to deal with that? Because we all know that within the DJing world, that comes, that type of environment is there. So I'm just wondering how Terence is now going to deal with that, being married. So then when he brought that out, Portia come back and said to him that he said that with such a plum. And I agree with Portia. He just said that like it was, yeah, I cheated. And I was like, dude, you're talking to your wife right now and you're telling her that you cheated on the women that you were with via your DJing. How are you making her feel reassured and secured at this moment? And like, when he's saying that he's changed and like things are different, and he was saying that the problem was probably him, and he said that again with such, well, you know, I was probably, oh yeah, I probably was the problem. I was like, right, you just said that like no effort whatsoever. Again, another flag you've just put in the way for Portia, for frick's sake, that she has to then process and deal with and think, well, how is this going to work within our marriage? He said that he was remorseful about it, and I'm going to have to say that he didn't show any remorse in terms of saying that he was remorseful about it, because this dude had a smile on his face when he said it. He said, yeah, I was remorseful about it afterwards. I just want you to take that into account. And I'm like, okay. You said that with a smile on your face, so how is she meant to take that? So I'm like, okay. So then it moves on to like a little bit of Tasha and Paul, because I haven't really spoken about Tasha and Paul in this episode, but it's to say that they are still getting on. They're getting on. There's nothing really to comment on and to showcase in that sense. And basically Tasha, I like the fact that Tasha did open up to Paul a bit more in regards to her past relationships and how she's worked around those, because they were quite toxic, she said. And I do honestly hope it works for these two. I really do, because they are the youngest of the group. To be fair, they are the youngest of the group. And then we go to Shona and Brad. and they're still getting on like a house on fire. And all I hope for them is that when reality hits, that the stuff that they're going through right now and the feelings that they feel doesn't fizzle out. Because Brad is already saying that he likes her and he trusts her, and basically said there's no one in the world like her. And I kind of have to agree. I don't think there is anyone in the world that kind of like Shona, to be fair. He's found the one and only person that literally meets his little niche and can fit into his life perfectly with symmetry. But as again, we'll see how this plays out for them. I am going to say that they're a couple that probably will get on my nerves after a time. I've seen all this lovey-dovey, kissy-kissy, facey-facey stuff. It probably will get on my nerves after a bit. And then we move on to Portia and Terence. And basically she says she's kind of annoyed in terms of how Terence has gone about telling her certain things, and especially around the cheating situation. And but she's saying that she's there to trust the process. And I'm like, yeah, you can be there to trust the process, but that doesn't mean ignore the issues, my girl. That does not mean ignore the issues. So then it moves on to George and Peggy, and I'm like, oh Lord, here we go. Here we go again. So George explains to Peggy a little bit more about his gaming community. And George, in his infinite wisdom, thought it would be funny to tell Peggy what he does when people get X amount of golden baguettes through his gaming community. And he talked about how he squats for them. He's fully clothed, by the way, but he does squat for them. That's some of the forfeits. Now, Peggy didn't get that in the slightest. Now, me being me, if George had told me that, because I have one of those pathetic brains at times, I'd have thought that shit was hella funny. I'd have even got him to get up and show me. I'd have said, show me. It wouldn't have fazed me in that sense, but I suppose because of the life that Peggy comes from, it's completely different to Georgie's, and it's completely different to someone like mine who has, I have a base level humour at the end of the day, and I would be, as I said, one of those ones where I'll get him to stand up and show me exactly how he squats down and be watching him. She could have made fun out of that, but she didn't. Again, she went off the deep end. Again, she went off the absolute deep end. And I thought to myself, George, you know what happened the first time? Why would you say this to her when you know that she's not that type of person to get what the fuck you're doing? Why would you do that? Like, seriously? And she like gets up and storms off again and leaves him. And I'm like, raw, man. Again, this is gonna be the typecast for their relationship, like really the typecast for their relationship, because their lives are completely different. And George is a bit of a lad's lad, where he does stupid shit all the time, it looks like, and she cannot cope with that at all. And then we go to the final date, and with Peggy and George, it comes back to the fact that, like, she's saying, like, dependent on how this date goes and how he speaks to her, in that sense, it's like a make or break type of thing. And I'm like, how many times is this guy going to appease her? Like, seriously, how many times is George going to have to appease Peggy? It looks like it's going to be all the damn time when he opens up his mouth and puts his motherfucking foot in it at the end of the day. There's some points about Peggy where I think she can be quite controlling, especially in terms of like where she was saying to him, well, I don't want you doing that again. And I'm kind of like, well, he did that before you at the end of the day. Okay, you can have those conversations and come to some kind of agreement in terms of how he works his channel being married from then on. But it's the fact that, you know, he did do that before you and before he met you, and then you said, I don't want you to do that. It comes off a little bit controlling to me at the end of the day. And I'm thinking, if she keeps laying down these barriers with him in terms of telling him what he can and can't do, or what is and is not acceptable within their marriage to her, he's going to grow to resent her. That's why I'm seeing it. At some point, he is going to grow to resent her. And then also on the flip side, when George comes to her and says again that, you know, he gives the whole "you're right" thing and then gives a little speech and says what he wants to say. Sometimes I think to myself, do you really mean it, George, or are you just saying it to literally have a quiet life? That's how I'm seeing it. That is how I'm seeing it at the end of the day, because he's literally again telling her that she's right. And I'm like, you can't keep doing this. You can't keep telling this woman that she's right if you're not feeling that she's right at the end of the day. There's got to be some give and take. You've got to have some type of conversation about the situation that's happening at hand, not her going off the deep end, strengths off, and then he's the one that's running after her to then say, you know what, you are right, I should have thought of this and I should have thought of that, because he's then the one that's compromising everything, because she's not compromising a damn thing. So I don't know. Again, with these ones, the jury is still out. I don't know how they're going to get on and whether they clearly like each other. I think there's something there for them both because they're trying. There's something there for them both, but their personalities are way too different. That's my opinion on those two. And then we get back to Terence and Portia and their dinner. Oh, that dinner did not go well, did it? It didn't go down well at all. They are so completely from two different worlds, and I am going to wonder how they're going to mesh with each other, like their lifestyles are going to mesh with each other. He was asking her how she feels towards him, and she was basically saying that her feelings are conflicted, and feels that he wouldn't have time for them as a family, and she feels that her guard has to be up because of the cheating that he then talked about. She asked the same question of him, and I think because of what she initially said, Terence then became guarded and a little bit cagey, and then turned around and said it's been interesting watching her ways. So then he tacks on to the end of that he's only been giving her 40% of himself, and basically she then got a little bit irate by saying, well, I stayed up past my bedtime, to my usual bedtime, to give you this time that you wanted. And as I said, I think Terence bit back because of what she said in the beginning, and then it kind of went downhill from them after that at this dinner. So basically he was saying it's not a big deal. At the end of the day, all he did was provide her with an insight as to what was going on with him. This is what Terence was saying with I've only given you 40% of myself. I've not given you the whole of myself at the end of the day. So when he tried to talk some more, she interrupted him because he was saying that, hold on, you haven't let me finish. And then she says, you were taking too long to get there. And I thought, hold on a minute, my girl, that was a bit disrespectful, don't you think? Because the conversation is a two-way street. It was give or take at that point. He was still talking and you cut him off at the juncture because you thought he was taking too long. So basically what happened then is it just clearly went downhill. The conversation went downhill for both of them at that point. So when she said that he was taking too long, yes, Terence got a little bit offended by that. And then when he turned around, she asked for a spoon for whatever it was she was eating, and he said, oh, there's one here, and went to give it to her. She goes, no, I want my own. And he just said, well, that's childish at the end of the day. And then she got hella defensive because he called her childish. It kind of was childish. It kind of was, because he was giving you a spoon that he wasn't using. It wasn't being used, but yet you didn't want that spoon because you felt peeved at him for him saying he ain't giving you 40% of himself. Bearing in mind, you showed him levels of disrespect too within that conversation. Both of you showed each other levels of disrespect within that conversation at the end of the day. And at that point, neither Terence nor Portia were listening to each other. They were just responding to each other. And I was just like, raw. Like, raw. Already? I ain't even finished off the freaking honeymoon and already you're hitting a rough patch. But I'm like, okay. We'll see how it turns out from here. Don't know if it's going to be any better, but we'll see how it turns out from here. So I will end that episode here. But as I always say, my renegades, please hit that subscribe button. Please hit that notification button so when you know I am back on and doing videos. And I'll speak to you all again soon. Peace out.